What is up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new ShawnSetGO video. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the classic arguments that I think that we all like to talk about, but one that in retail is a little bit more skewed because we don't really consider race passives and those type of things to be at the forefront of the game anymore. It's one of those things that kind of has gone away with time. But I think it's always good to look at the numbers to see where people stand. And are we still kind of following the same paths as we did before, with maybe a few additions here and there? So the post that came up that started by this idea of discussion was this one right here, where it says race popularity player data. Y'all actually like dragons. With Drac'thyr free from just being evoker, their population is on the rise already above the old races like Panda and many with allied races. The evoker, however, is still the least played class. So with that, it's not the race that holds back the evoker, it's the evoker that held back the race. So honestly, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think that when you think about evoker as a character, I think where it melds well is, of course, with Drac'thyr the most. And I mean, like, it makes the obvious sense, like it's the only class again, or it's the only race again. But I think that the issue with Drac'thyr players that played Drac'thyr was there wasn't much variety beyond that. So now that it's been much more expanded upon, I think people are obviously going to flock, because that's kind of the unbroken ground for a lot of people who have maybe played just evoker in the past, or maybe didn't even try Drac'thyr because it was like, oh well, I don't feel like doing evoker. So like having that, of course, does change a lot of things and does expand Drac'thyr a little bit more. But let's see what people are saying. It says, ever since they opened up the class selection, yeah, I mean, Drac'thyr evokers must still be carrying those numbers on their back. The class would be more popular if it was available to more races. Yeah, so I think that definitely, I understand Blizzard's standpoint of not adding it to more. I don't know if it really fits well with any other race. So it makes sense, at least. Maybe in a later, later on when we have more races, it would make more sense. But I don't really see it right now. So unless they add some more lore, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to add it to somebody else. See, Mechanomes have a very limited transmog options, but their racials aren't bad. They look too goofy for most people, but when you farm a bunch of mechanical gear from Mechagon, Normorgon, you can make Mechanome look incredibly cool. With War Within, I switched my usual Gnome Warlock to a Mechanome Warrior. Honestly, that's the reason why I probably will never play a Mechanome. Actually, I don't think I ever played Gnome, so maybe that would be the actual reason that I wouldn't play. But let's take a look at the list real quick and just talk about maybe some of the numbers and where they're at. So obviously, I think the top of the list is going to be a mix of aesthetically pleasing or your classic, like your classic fantasy. So Blood Elf obviously being on top, aesthetically pleasing characters, it's just an easy pick there. Night Elf following it right below it. It's a mixture of it being that classic World of Warcraft race, as well as it also the Alliance version of that. So it makes a lot of sense as well. Human, I would honestly give that, in a fantasy game, I would give it trash, but I think at the same time, most people who play a fantasy game probably to some degree wants to make themselves, in the game, so they can get that experience. So it makes sense. The immersion factor is all there, so that makes a whole bunch of sense. Orc, one of those classic things that you see in fantasy games, I think is really good. For all you like fantasy fans, all you Lord of the Rings fans, it makes a lot of sense. And plus, one of the strongest classes for Horde since the beginning. Void Elf, I mean, I want to say this is because of the War Within, but I think that Void Elf falls behind. It falls third in rank of elves, obviously, but it makes a lot of sense because if you wanted the aspect of Blood Elves, but you want to experience it for Alliance, getting that. And then additionally, of course, Xal'atath as well as Illyria. you know, whether whether you want to say, like, I'm kind of in the middle of the argument of like whether Illyria is a void elf. I know, I get it, just uses the void powers and void form, etc. But whatever, tomato potato. So the next one is Tauren. Honestly, to me, this is the first one that is just truly, it's a classic WoW race that is just held strong in its lore, and it's always been consistently the best like furry class. Like I hate to break it to anybody else, the Vulpir, I'm sorry, but Tauren is just better. It's always been better. Troll was very surprising for me to being next, though. I don't necessarily, I don't like see that, at least when I play the game, I don't see that being top, but it is surprising to me that is high ranking, especially above Undead. I thought Undead would be much higher in this case, but it's actually not. So that's actually one of those first upsets where I'm just like, oh, you know, I thought Undead would be much higher. You know, maybe there's one of those things that changes over time, just because Undead haven't had the best reputation since Shadowlands. I mean, you could say Sylvanas kind of ruined that for a lot of people. Maybe if this was in the past, you know, like Wrath, this might be way different than what it was or what it is. So it makes sense. I get it. And then Zandalari Troll, and you know, maybe I'm not getting Troll enough like respect, because there is that new pseudo troll race, right? So I mean, like, maybe that's the reason. Like, that's gonna happen, and maybe people are amping up those numbers. Vulpira being next after Zandalari Troll, okay, but we're also skipping. Sorry, I didn't mean to skip these two, but Dwarf and Draenei. Did not expect Draenei to be as high as it is, but I gotta say, Paladin's one of those really like high ranking classes. So, or like high ranking, classes. So I think anyone who can play Paladin is going to be high on this list, though that list is much wider now. So I'm glad that Dwarf is above Draenei, though, because like Dwarf is, I feel like, classic fantasy there, which is really cool. So we can go further and further on, but I'm just going to scroll through these to the bottom, because I wanted to talk about, of course, you know, we have Drac'thyr, which are pretty low, but as far as being higher than, for example, Koltirin, or for example, Pandaren, and another one, Mechanome, and then now Earthen. I get it, it's the current expansion, but it's gotta, that's low. That's low. So, especially when this is the expansion that everyone should be trying it, right? So let's look at the comments. It says more perf that Earthen was an awful idea. The day they announced Earthen wouldn't be able to become druids, I stopped caring about them. Literally all I want is the option to play Horde Druid that displays boot transmogs instead of feet hooves. Okay, that makes sense. I get it. For a lot of people, race is a transmog. Like race, like picking what race you pick is based off of like transmog and how good it looks. So that makes sense. I think Earthen would have been better if they did a maybe not a new class, but maybe a difference in engineering. Like you default engineering, but like you can weave that into your class. That'd be crazy. Like where you could weave professions into classes. That would add like a whole like can of worms, I'm sure. But maybe if they did something to where you could weave something into it where it's not a full-on class itself, but it's going to make every class a little bit different. Maybe. I don't know. I just feel like not enough was done there. Plus, like, to me, they're kind of dull as far as like I can get them as NPCs. They make a lot of sense, but like they're truly like walking, talking AI chat GPT. So it's not super interesting to me. Side story, the Earthen data showing how disappointing it is to get a third flavor of Dwarf as the only new race class this expansion. Earthen are less popular than Mechanomes. Ouch. I mean, you can't compare them because Evoker can't stay in Visage form. But more importantly, I refuse to believe that there are more Mechanomes in Earthen. I thought they changed it to where there's more opportunities with Visage form. I don't know enough about Evoker or enough about Drac'thyr and like the whole Visage form thing. Also sad that Earthen is so low. I love my Earthen Arcane Mage. Just hated actually playing Arcane Mage after the dungeon grind. Well, that's unfortunate. Numbers Earthen are higher than I expected. Really? Yeah, it's actually... Earthen is such a disappointment for me. I was hyped for about some DRG references with rocks and stones, but no, we get people who are as interesting as talking to stones IRL. Yeah. I know Earthen are way newer, but honestly, I'm surprised their numbers are as low on the chart as they are. I see way more Earthen in the Mechanomes in game than Mechanomes in game. But then again, I mean, like 0.3 to 0.9. I mean, like how much more are you expecting to see? I would say for as much as Mechanomes are low, and I don't like Mechanomes, and it's hard for me to like gnomes as playable characters. To me, Mechanomes are an interesting race still. Like it's still interesting the way they're designed. Just like how Blood Elves, you know, like essentially like how they came to be is interesting. Void Elves in a similar way, you know, it's succumbing to the void, like an addiction, you know. It's cool the way they come about. They don't just exist. So I think that Mechanomes don't get enough credit. I just don't like playing gnomes just because they're kind of annoying to me. But Earthen, the interest to me isn't quite there. So I almost get it. It's almost understandable as to why the numbers are pretty low there. So let's look at a little bit more here. Blood Elves are so high. Yeah. Blood Elves through the moon, of course. I like dragons if they didn't look starved and anemic. Oh no. Coltier and Drac'thyr. Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't do more with Drac'thyr. I wonder if the thought is that it wasn't as successful as they thought it would be. It seemed really cool at the time, like during BFA, but I haven't really seen a lot since. It's like one of those things that the allied races thing, a lot of the ones that I thought when they were first released, they would kind of expand upon like the interest there. But if you look at it, for example, Tauren being so high, I mean, if you look at High Mountain Tauren being so low, it's like with them being like, they look cooler, they have the same vibe. And when they were first introduced, it was really cool, but they haven't really expanded upon it. So maybe people just like Tauren for Tauren. So it's strange that you have like, for example, Dwarf. Like Dwarf is up there, but then if you go all the way down to, where is it? Dark Iron Dwarf, not as much of a separation, but still, to me, Dark Iron Dwarf are pretty neat as far as like a transmog, especially. Like that's there for sure. Way more than Earthen. So some things don't make a whole lot of sense, but I think a lot of it can be attributed to the fact that allied races were kind of left in the dust after they were introduced. The day they announced Earthen wouldn't be able to become druids. Yeah, baby. Yeah, a lot about Earthen here. If I could make all my characters Drac'thyr, I would. I love double jumping and being able to float around. Wait, the Demon Hunter? I mean, all Pandaren players are level 10 Death Knights, AFKing in major cities. Oh no. Yeah, that's unfortunate. A lot about Earthen here. Yeah, people swapped to Drac'thyr when I became available for non-evokers because Glide is incredibly good, especially on classes like Priest. Drac'thyr is also the exclusive race for Evoker, which has been meta in Mythic Plus for multiple seasons. Very similar to Night Elf being so popular in PvP due to Shadow Meld. That's not to say some people don't go Dragon just to be Dragon, but these stats are going to be inflated by the hardcore players looking for advantages. Yeah, I could see that. To me, though, I think this is more than for min-maxing. Nowadays, I feel like this is more of an aesthetics thing. It's a transmog thing than anything else. But that's just my thoughts on it. Class and race. So Night Elf Druid, very traditional. Of course, Blood Elf, Night Elf Hunter, Demon Hunter, that makes a whole lot of sense, as well as Paladin here as well for Blood Elf. course, Drac'thyr, an evoker. Duh. And then your druids, your warriors, humans, and orcs. It only makes sense like fantasy wise, so that's a whole bunch of sense. Same reason why you might see Draenei being shaman or paladin for your light forged. It's like of course, like it's almost like class that you just imagine them playing. A lot of randoms in here. Like a lot of them start to match up. There's a lot in here. Of course, there's a lot of combos that you can do. Goblin Mage. So I would say with this, it makes sense. Most people play the class of which aligns the closest to that particular race. You'd probably see a lot of like Void Elf Warlock, Undead Warlock, like it just, of course, Human Warlock, of course. So yeah, I would say the races definitely match up aesthetically of what people like the most, or what has been consistent throughout the expansion. So it only makes sense. I always say that the biggest thing is that it's just sad that Earthen aren't really like launching off. But I mean, as many of you have already seen, I could pull it up here. The new thing that apparently that we're expecting to see is right here is Ethereals. So the idea that they may be the next playable race, which is a surprise to me. I mean, I thought there was going to be the pseudo troll class. I can never remember the name. I apologize, but with this, you know, I mean, maybe this will pump up the numbers for certain classes for sure. I would definitely play this if I were to play like a new race. I don't really have an interest in Drac'thyr myself. So I do think this will add something that is interesting. It isn't necessarily like aesthetically as like the same as like Blood Elf or anything like that, but is cool and pretty like hardcore as far as characters go. So I am interested to see what comes for the future. But of course, let me know in the comments what you think. What are the reasons why Earthen really hasn't taken off? And what are the reasons why Drac'thyr is kind of topping those new like expansion added races on that chart? Like maybe what are the reasons for one happening or not happening? So let me know in the comments. Of course, if this video was helpful, informative, useful for you in some way, please do give it a like and subscribe to the page while you're at it. We're on the road to 1,500 subscribers, and you guys have been super supportive, super helpful along the way. So I hope we can keep on providing content in this way and enjoyable content as we jump into season 2 and more, doing more that way. But of course, if you would like to catch us live or have discussions live, we do play World of Warcraft live on stream, as well as some variety at twitch.tv/ShawnSetGo. You can catch us there Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Usually around this time that I'm recording this video. So until next time, you guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.